Hello and welcome to Thursday. It is time to watch more Fullmetal Alchemist. Or rather, we have watched more Fullmetal Alchemist. And
right now, all of it.
in fast forward, so we can get through it really quick. We have finished the second Cour. Not sure still if that's how that's pronounced, but I'm pronouncing it that way. So this is our Fullmetal Alchemist Cour 2 review. And just as a reminder, that is episodes 14 through 25 of the original 2003 series. So let's talk a little bit about that. So do you remember all of the events that happened?
I mean, in the whole series, yeah, but I don't remember where the cutoff is.
So this Cour started with episode 14, which I think was like the introduction. The introducing an introduction of Scar, who I believe was seen in the first Cour, like occasionally, like he's like going up library, like, what is this place? Is this the library? I need to get a book. And Edward Elric's like, it's the library, or something. Anyway, in these last few episodes, in the second Cour, he's like fleshed out and introduced, and then everything happens really quick. Because like he just suddenly is on the scene and he's like killing everyone. If you're an alchemist, then you have to die.
You got a target on your back.
You got a target on your back. Also, and this is probably obvious, but I have to spell this out for some people. This will contain spoilers for, episodes 14 through 25 of Fullmetal Alchemist. So watch further at your own discretion. So yeah, Scar becomes like a central point in this next set of episodes, and he's after State Alchemist, and he is chasing down Ed and not Al, but then also Al. Like he wants to kill Ed because he's a State Alchemist, but then he is also mad at Al because he's assisting, so he's like getting in the way. But Ed and Al are trying to find Marco, who they find, and then because everything they do is about the Philosopher's Stone. There's always like these different subplots going on, but the overt plot for Ed and Al is always like, where's that Philosopher's Stone? It's gotta be around here somewhere. So they talk to Marco, and they're like, they want to take him back to their hometown, but then he doesn't want to go back there because it's
revealed that he was part of the Ishbala massacre.
Yeah.
And he killed 2 doctors who were Winry's parents.
Yeah, I don't even know if he killed them. I think someone else killed them. I think it might have actually been Mustang.
I don't remember.
But anyway, they died, and he was responsible because whenever Ed was like, you want to go to my hometown? The only people that live there is Winry and her grandma. And he was like, oh god, Winry and her grandma, that's bad. So then that was revealed. Long story short, Marco, I think he's dead. Marco dies, or something happens to Marco. And then Ed and Al they learn from that he has notes in the library. So they're like, we'll go to the library and get those notes, and then the library's like burned down, and then it's revealed that Scar had a fight with like Lust and Gluttony, and it burned the whole thing down. But then, how convenient, there's a girl who
has a photographic memory and read that particular book,
who read every book in the friggin' library, and was like, oh, I'll just write them all down for you. And I was like, all right. So that happened. So she writes down the entire library's contents for the investigation, and so Ed and Al can figure it out. Then there's a series of like several days where they sit in a room and they look at the notes, and then finally they're like, Soylent Green is people, and then they
yeah, that is kind of what happens.
And then they're really upset about that, and then they're like, well, I guess we'll just give up. And then the credits start to roll, and then the one military guard's like, wait, and she grabs the credits down, and she's like, but what if there's a different way? And then Ed's like, well, Jiminy Cricket, maybe. And then they relook at the notes, and they're like, what's going on in Lab 5? And the soldiers that were there for the bodyguard, we never even mentioned Armstrong. which
Yeah.
is sad because it's such a memorable character, and every time he talks, I'm like, that's just Piccolo. You can't fool me, Christopher. That's Piccolo's voice. There's a guy, and he's Muscle Man, and he shows up to do cool stuff, and
He lives with glitter around his head.
And like, I liked him as a character. There's even a part, actually, I didn't mention it. There's a part between getting the notes and everything where Scar has like screwed up Ed and Al, and they have to go back home briefly.
Yeah, and get fixed.
And Armstrong goes with them, and it's just like a little extra episode thing. But anyway, so Armstrong's a character that exists, and he's nice, but he was not like super vital to any of the plots, other than at the beginning he like saves Ed and Al from Scar. So they're back going to the Laboratory 5, and they get there, and Ed crawls into an air vent because he's tiny, and then he goes inside, and Al waits outside, and then they both get attacked by soul armor.
Yeah.
And then they fight, and this goes on for episodes. And there's a huge, and I'll talk about that in a second, but there's a huge shift in pacing and also tone from the first Cour to the second Cour that's like gigantic. Anyway, they fight the soul armor, and they win, and then Ed finds out that there's been all this crazy crap going on at this lab, and who is it but Daughter Dog's dad? Daughter Dog's dad, Tucker, has now become Tucker Rabbit, and he's this giant guy, and he's trying to make a new daughter because he's sick in the head. I'm just explaining it how I remember it. This is how I'm recalling this.
And he's like, look, we have all this red water.
So then there was one of Ed's things was when he was looking at the map, he was like, this is next to a prison, and Soylent Green is people. I bet they're using the people to try and make a stone. So then when he gets there, he finds out that they're bringing people in, trying to use them to make the stone. So then there's this something that happens, and like all of the bad dudes are there, like lust and gluttony, and then envy. They're all there, and they're like, we're homunculi, and Scar reveals that too, because Scar shows up at some point. A lot of stuff happens
and
like all at
they're
once.
like, we're gonna kill your brother if you don't.
So then they're like, you've got to kill all of it, because there's a bunch of prisoners that wind up in there, and they're like, you got to transmute these prisoners into a stone, and we want the stone because we want to be human, because we want to know how it feels to feel the rain on our faces or something. So then Ed is like, all right, and then he goes to do it, and he's like, wait, I don't want to do this, and then I actually don't remember what happens. What happens?
Oh, all the military breaks in.
Is that what happens? They break in because Armstrong carries them out.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. So then Ed is injured again. They had just been injured, and then him and Al are in the hospital. And when Al was fighting the soul armor was like, what if you're not a real boy? And he was like, what? And then during the time in the hospital, Ed's like, I'm injured, and Al's like, I think I'll become a conspiracy theorist. And then Ed gets repaired because Winry shows up because she forgot to put a screw in him or something. And then she helps him recover, and then Ed takes Al up to the roof and is like, I'm going to repair you. So he repairs Al, and then Al's like, everything is fake. Even though it, like, there's too much that it doesn't make sense. Like, it's real, like, far gone conspiracy theorists. And I was like, Al, what's going on, dude? Like, there's, like, photos, all these people, why would these people be in on it? It doesn't make any sense. I was like, no, wait, I'm young and I don't understand things. So he jumps off of the ledge and just runs. And then he meets up with Scar.
And, like, the refugees.
And they become buddies.
Yeah.
But also there's a certain moment whenever Scar is going into the red water laboratory thing where he's looking through the thing, and he looks at Ed about to do the transmutation, and he's like, that's bad, don't do that. But then when the military busts in and he has a chance to like kill Ed, instead he's like, Ed, now get out of here. So like it was that moment he decided he was done killing him. So like there was that, you know, beat that, you know, they really pushed on that I caught. I was like, oh, okay, so like he's not going to kill him now. That's good. Anyway, so
Refugee camp.
back to refugee camp. So Scar and Al become like best buds.
They go rescue a kid. Well,
There's some stuff that happens. There's like a kid who is in trouble and they rescue him. Then they find that there's an entire camp and they're like living in the sewer. And then
no, the kid gets kidnapped because he went to look for his locket.
that's right. The kid drops a locket and there's this whole thing where Al meets up with these kids and their brothers. So Al sees himself and the brothers. And then the locket, this kid has a locket and it falls on the ground. So then the kid's like, "I gotta get my lockets," and then he runs out of the sewer into danger to get the locket. Then he gets kidnapped by mercenaries, which are hired by the military, and then
They go after them.
yeah, Scar and some old guy and the older brother go after. And Al. They all go after these mercenaries, and then like at the last second, like Ed shows up and Winry. And they're like, "We'll do it!" And then Ed and Al and Scar all like are on each other's team, and they take out the mercenaries. And then I think that's pretty much it. Scar like leaves.
Yeah.
Right? Scar gets on a boat and he's like, "I'm gonna go to my people." And Ed's like, "I still hate you." And
But
then
what
he goes,
about?
"Well, yeah, I'm getting there. But that's Scar, and
No,
he's
I'm
gone."
saying Ed asks Scar.
Oh,
he's like,
that.
"Oh, but what about the stone?" And he's like, "See ya, suckers."
Yeah, which is really upsetting because the next big plot point is Ed's like, "Well, I gotta go find Scar to ask him that question that he already wouldn't answer once." Anyway, so then we cut to Major Hughes, and also there's a few like weird flashbacks where him and Mustang are talking in Mustang's apartment, and Mustang's been like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about doing like bad stuff," and Hughes is like, "You
Don't do
shouldn't
bad stuff."
You shouldn't do bad stuff," and Mustang's like, "I know, but I might." And then we cut to Hughes, and he's been doing research on how like all these people in the military are like in on this big
It's a big conspiracy.
And he takes it to the Fuhrer, and the Fuhrer's like, "What? I'm just kidding," because that's his thing, is that he's joking. But the Fuhrer's secretary is like this girl who's been dead for a long time, and Hughes finds out, so he talks to her and is like, "You've been dead for like a long time," and she's like, "Really?" And he goes, "So who are you?" And then he gets attacked, and it turns out that girl is Sloth. Because we're getting all the 7 deadly sins out of the way. So then he's like, "Oh crap!" But then he gets away, and he's with Ross, who is the bodyguard. And then he's like trying to like contact the Fuhrer, but the Fuhrer's already left town. And Hughes is like, "Oh man."
He calls Mustang.
He calls Mustang, and Mustang like doesn't answer anything.
He jumped on a train to get to Central.
So he's like, "I can't contact anyone." And then he's like, "Oh, by the way, Ross, you're not the real Ross because I know this moles." And Ross is like, "Oh," and then puts the mole on, and he's like, "That's cool," and then cuts her throat. And then he walks away because he doesn't understand how this works. And then the sloth turns into Sloth.
I thought it was Envy.
Is it Envy? Or Sloth?
Sloth was...
I don't remember. They're all the same except Gluttony.
Yeah.
Lust talks slightly differently. Lust is like, "I am lust," and Gluttony's like, "Can I eat them?" That's his only line in the entire show. But then the person, whoever it is, one of the sins, turns into Hugh's wife and gets a gun and is like, "Now you die." And then he dies. And he's dead.
The whole episode, they're really like shoving Alicia down your throat. They're like, "Oh, let's tuck you into bed, I love you."
Yeah, they were. Like, and I knew that Hughes was going to die. I've known that Hughes was going to die for a long time because they keep shoving the fact that he is a kid, like in every scene of the show, is like, you know, "Have you seen my daughter?" So I'm like, at the beginning of the show, I was like, well, he's going to live forever because they wouldn't do something like that. But then, you know, as the show's gone on and I've seen that, no, actually they'll do whatever they want and kill everyone. That's helped me understand that, like, oh, okay, well, Hughes is going to die. I just didn't think it was going to be quite this soon. But it was pretty, it was pretty quick. He is dead. But yeah, the end was actually really sad because they kept, especially in this last episode, they showed his daughter, all these times, and then even like during the funeral, like I teared up because, they're burying him, and like the 3-year-old daughter doesn't understand the concept of death, and she's saying all of these things that is what would come out of the mouth of a 3-year-old for trying to understand what's going on, and it was really sad.
I teared up and I knew that was coming. I
teared up and I was caught off guard. I mean, I knew that he was going to die, but I didn't think he was going to die like immediately, because when I knew that he was going to die, it was whenever he followed Juliet down the hallway, and I was like, oh, he's dead. But then he kind of got away, and I was like, oh, maybe he's fine. And then shortly after, it's like, no, he's dead. And then he died. But yeah, so that is the second Cour of Fullmetal Alchemist.
That was the last thing I knew about it.
Even though you said that during the first Cour.
No, I said there was a plot point, and there was a character I was waiting on, and the character was Armstrong, and that was the plot point.
Okay, so now for realsies, you don't know what's happening next.
Yeah, I don't know from here.
It's been a ride. Now, earlier I had said that the pacing and the tonality of the show has changed dramatically, and that is so true. In the first Cour, in the first 13 episodes, it really feels like there's definitely some filler stuff in there too, but it feels like there's a lot of like traveling. Like, it's like, we gotta go to this city, Al, because we gotta figure this out. And Al's like, okay, brother. And then it feels like every episode they're in like a different city or something. That's the way it felt. In the second one, it feels very concentrated. It feels like everything happened within the span of just a few days. Yeah. Probably because I think it did. But it felt like that. And tonally, it changed dramatically. Like, there's still the oh, we're a funny anime thing that pops up every once in a while. That shows up every once in a while where they do the... It's the best way I can describe that.
The best way you can describe it?
Where the characters yell at each other and...
Their models change to like...
Yeah, like, they still do that. But that is now not the norm. That is now the exception. Whereas in the first Cour, it was mostly like carefree, and then you'd get these hints of like, darkness, like, whoa, okay, that's messed up. And now as the show is shifted into the second Cour, it's kind of flip-flopped where the tone is serious. It's like, oh, there's this guy on the loose,
and he's killing people left and right.
And he kills people, and he doesn't just kill people, he kills them by blowing their brains out with his hand. And like, the show, from a graphic standpoint, like, changed a lot too, because it shows all of that. Like, it's like there's blood everywhere and he's blowing people's brains out. And it's just really weird because when the show starts in the first season, the first Cour, like, you don't really see that coming. And now that we're, I guess about halfway through the entire show, I'm like, where are we going? Like, we've went to some really dark places already, and I know that there's probably darker still to come, and I'm just like, man, they keep trying to, there's parts where they keep trying to get away with the, oh, we're still funny, dumb anime show, but it's not that anymore. It's a show that has revealed itself to have extremely heavy, mature themes. They're discussing all sorts of things. They're discussing, the abuse of power and covering up things when you're in a position of power. They're talking about their government. They're talking about religion. They're talking about all of these different things that that are very hard to understand, mature themes, and it's not what it was in the first few episodes of the show. It's a completely it's not a completely different show, but it is. It's not the same show. It's not just, oh, mom died and I think we could bring her back. Now it's like, it's out there. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed us talking about the show. It's a great show. I'll say that. Like, I've really enjoyed it, and it's this second Cour. I hate that word, but I keep using it because I guess it's the word to use. The second Cour has really made it worthwhile. And I gotta admit that I felt like we were treading water pretty hardcore in that fifth lab thing. Like, the whole... Right when they get back from home where Winry's repaired them, the whole thing from then until, like, doing the research, finding out about the lab, standing outside the lab, fighting the guys, getting deeper into the lab, finding Tucker, fighting the guys, all that stuff. That takes like 5 episodes, and it feels like it takes too long. But that being said, it was still good. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not trying to, like, prevent you from getting a word in
No,
edgewise.
it's fine. I mean, it was the same way, like, with Dragon Ball Z. Like, I did all the talking. Because I hadn't seen it. And now this is something that you hadn't seen.
And you have seen. Or you're being reminded you've seen.
Yeah, up to this point.
But now as we move forward, it's going to be different because neither of us have seen it.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, this... Is this where the fork goes for Brotherhood?
I don't know.
At some point, like, Brotherhood is like somewhat the same show and somewhat not, because it wasn't the classic case of the manga, the
anime, like, coming out.
The anime getting ahead of the manga.
Mm-hmm.
And then the anime's like, well, I guess we'll just do whatever we want. And that's what the show was. And I think maybe it's up to this point, but I don't know for sure, and I don't care to know. I'll figure it out later once we've watched this in Brotherhood. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Once again, hope you enjoyed this little review, or at the very least, thought it was funny. We will continue watching FMA, and you will probably get the next review as close as the first and the second review were. Just a few days. Because they're small, they're short.
Yeah.
They don't take very long to get through. So, thanks for watching. We'll see you, what do I say at the end of these?
Let's meet back tomorrow.
That's it. Let's meet back tomorrow, shall we? Sorry, I get all confused. I'm thinking about Daughter Dog again.